Have you ever had this type of feedback? Loud, in your face, negative? Or perhaps you've had a quieter, softer, more positive type of feedback? Or perhaps you've even used technology to give yourself some feedback. These are all different methods of learning about your performance in order to improve. So let's dig into today's lesson, which is the types of feedback in skill acquisition. Let's get into it. So the four main things that you'll learn in this video are extrinsic feedback, or internal, extrinsic feedback, external, and knowledge of performance, knowledge of results. So first of all, what is feedback? Very simply, it's the information about a person's performance of a task, whether that's sport, playing music, or anything else, which is used as a basis for improvement. A skill is performed, and information is given back to the performer about that performance. So, when a skill is performed, there is different types of feedback given to the performer. First of all, we've got intrinsic or internal. This can be things like visual or auditory. When we're performing a skill, we can see and maybe hear if we've done it correctly. We can also use proprioception and touch. We can actually feel or sense whether the skill has been done correctly. Intrinsic comes from within. The other type of feedback that we receive is extrinsic, also known as external or augmented. This comes in the form of knowledge of results and knowledge of performance. When does feedback actually occur? Once again, a skill is performed and we can receive concurrent feedback. This is the feedback during the performance. The other type of feedback is terminal, feedback after the performance. And finally, how can feedback be delivered? It can be positive feedback, which reinforces your performance if you've done the right things, or it can be negative feedback that points out the errors and things to avoid in the future performances. So, let's dive into intrinsic feedback. This, very simply, comes from the performer of the skill. So the person doing the skill might receive visual, auditory, touch, proprioceptive feedback during or after their skill. The first type is visual. The performer can see if they've done the skill correctly. A very simple example is seeing a soccer ball hit a target once we've performed that skill. Next we have auditory. This is when the performer can hear if they've done the skill correctly. Sticking with soccer, the athlete can hear the noise of the ball coming off the boot. If it's hit correctly, it'll make a certain noise, and an experienced performer will be able to recognize that. If it makes a different noise, they may not have struck the ball using the correct technique. Next we have touch. The performer can feel if they've done the skill correctly. An example is feeling the pressure of the ball in the correct part of the foot when kicking or dribbling, as shown in this video here. And finally, we have proprioception. The performer can actually sense if they've done the skill correctly, feeling things like balance and the pull of muscles and ligaments. An example here, when the soccer player is kicking the ball, they feel balanced and in control. Now we're moving on to extrinsic feedback. This is the opposite to intrinsic feedback. This comes from someone or something other than the performer. Examples would include a coach, teammates, video, or even data. There are two main forms here, knowledge of results and knowledge of performance. Let's have a look at these. So, knowledge of results. As the name suggests, this is feedback provided at the end of the skill. Very simply, was it successful or not? Did you get the ball in the goal or not? Yes or no? The other type of extrinsic feedback is knowledge of performance. This is more useful as this type of feedback provides information on how the skill was performed, the process of the skill. An example would be the coach says to adjust your standing foot to point towards the goal when kicking. This is very useful and works on technique. And improving knowledge of performance will actually improve results as well. Okay, we've gone through a lot. Now it's time to see how much you've learned. We're going to do a quick quiz. So grab a bit of paper and a pen and get ready to write. So scenario 1, Brian here, shooting a basketball into a hoop and he misses. What types of feedback might he receive? Pause the video, write down your answer, and then compare it to the sample answer given in a few seconds. Okay, he will receive intrinsic feedback, such as sight, sound, touch, and proprioception. Okay, notice how it doesn't say anything about external sources, just the feedback that he will receive from himself. Scenario 2. Brian watches a video of himself taking a shot. What type of feedback is this? This would be extrinsic or augmented feedback, as it's coming from an external source. Now this can be both knowledge of results or performance, depending on what Brian focuses on. If he looks simply at the ball going in the net, that would be knowledge of results. If he focuses more on his technique and the process of the skill, that would be knowledge of performance. Scenario 3. You are Brian's coach, and you tell him to take 10 shots blindfolded. Once he does that, you say he gets 4 out of 10 shots in, with a stern, frustrated tone. What type of feedback is this? It is negative, extrinsic or augmented feedback, knowledge of results. The only feedback Brian is receiving is whether or not he got the ball in the hoop, and furthermore, it was delivered negatively, highlighting the errors. Now, final scenario, you are Brian's coach and you tell him to take 10 shots blindfolded once again. After each shot, you tell Brian if the shot was long, short, left or right. What type of extrinsic feedback is this? This would be extrinsic knowledge of performance feedback. This feedback provides useful information for Brian about the process of his skill execution, and he can use this information to improve his next performance. So there you have it. Here's a quick summary of what you've learnt so far. We have intrinsic feedback. This is internal. We have visual, auditory, touch, and proprioception. This comes from within the athlete or the performer of the skill. We also have extrinsic feedback, or external. This comes in knowledge of performance, knowledge of results. Thanks very much for watching this video. Comment below if you have any questions about this topic, and check out my other videos to learn more about health, PE, sports science, and fitness. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye.